Come on.
We could all start singing around about now. Senator Roberts.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for appearing again today. So, Florence is now acknowledged to be bogged. When will it be unbogged?
I expect in weeks, not months. As soon as the slurry plant is operating, we'll push forward. Obviously, we're in close consultation with our colleagues at DPIE and Parks, but we expect it to be relatively soon.
And I must say that I empathise with you, having managed underground projects, some quite large, not as large as this one, but there's a lot of uncertainty, and it's hard telling people who are looking on how to think about this. It's very difficult to describe, so very
You've got to
difficult.
see it to believe it.
Yeah, that's right. If the project is completed, and we've got journalists, admittedly journalists, now saying it's time to cut losses on Snowy 2. If the project is completed and all the high voltage transmission lines built across farmyards and national parks, there must be a calculation that takes the capital cost of the project as a whole and divides that by the life of the project to get a figure for how much the annual amortisation charge for the capital cost will be. Do you have the latest projection, please?
There was quite a lot in your question. Obviously, we haven't got an updated cost yet, and we'll provide that in months. We don't have the cost of transmission, so we wouldn't be able to provide that. I fully expect through our corporate plan process we'll assess the returns from Snowy 2, and if anything, the commercial case for it has got stronger since FID.
Sorry?
The commercial case for it has gotten stronger since the financial investment decision.
Yeah, there are many factors that drove that commercial decision in the first place. Well, it wasn't commercial from what we understand because there's no cost-benefit analysis, and the business case was redacted heavily under Malcolm Turnbull's prime ministership. This annual amortisation charge, which you can't provide, is combined with annual costs like labour and maintenance to calculate what the real cost per megawatt hour will be once the project starts. Do you have that? You wouldn't have that projection either then, the projected cost of per megawatt hour.
That's correct, but I think to think about Snowy 2 in megawatt hours is perhaps not the right way to think about it.
It's a battery.
But it's the provision of dispatchable demand over very long storage duration that allows lots of variable renewable electricity to be delivered. So we look at the business case in a much more fulsome way across the whole Snowy business. And for example, over the past few years, we've procured 1,500 megawatts of solar and PPA, solar and wind PPAs to enable the transition which assets like Snowy 2 support. So I think you've got to look at a whole of business case and the simple amortisation plus labour is perhaps too simplistic a way to consider the business case.
But now you've got me really worried, and it's not your responsibility with the solar and wind, but now I'm terrified of it. So your website lists the levelised cost of storage at between $25 to $35 per megawatt hour. On 340,000 megawatt hours each year, this suggests an annual cost of $11 million, including operating costs, maintenance, capital costs, and the cost of buying the electricity to pump the water uphill. Is the $25 to $35 figure still accurate? And if not, what is the new figure?
I'm not got a calculator that capable in my head, but I think there might be a multiplying factor out on those numbers. The levelised cost of storage I think we have on our website is sourced from international studies and our view of levelised cost of storage. I don't have the updated figure in my head at the moment.
Just doing our staff team did some calculations. Now, admittedly, we don't have all the costs, but it just seems ridiculously low. So when we pile on these extra costs of the delay, we're wondering about what will happen.
Yeah, and the levelised, just to be clear, the levelised cost of storage is what one would add to variable renewable electricity to provide a firm product. Mm-hmm. And also the 340,000 megawatt hours of storage is not deployed over a year. It will be deployed multiple times through the year, depending on the market dynamics.
Okay. So it seems to us that the capital cost is becoming a huge stumbling block. Even if you take just the cost of the project at $6 billion, and there are serious doubts about that now, and amortise those across 50 years, the annual capital charge will be $120 million. Double that if you add the poles and the wires. That puts the cost of your electricity at over $700 per megawatt hour, including the poles and wires. The current spot price, now admittedly the weekend was cold down here, but the current spot price for last weekend was $150 per megawatt hour. Is there something we're missing?
Certainly we'll do a full, financial review of the project when the increased costs are known. But I think you're mischaracterising the nature of the asset in that it isn't an energy provider. Mm-hmm. It's an insurance provider for when the wind isn't blowing and the sun isn't shining or there is plant failure elsewhere. So we don't sell it as a baseload energy price, which is what you're referencing.
Hasn't it been touted as a peak hour or peak period source of electricity?
Well, I mean, the two major sources of revenue will be the difference between the price we pump the water up to Tantangra, mm-hmm. which will soak up demand from solar and wind when it's not required, and the price at which we sell it in peak periods when solar and wind isn't available or other plants are not available. So it's very much it's an asset about being there when everything else isn't. So it isn't sold on an energy basis, which are the reference prices you're quoting.
Okay. But the projected cost must be the single most important KPI of this project.
Well, cost and schedule are my most important KPIs. The reason we came out with the schedule is that there are many stakeholders interested in the schedule, and we'll work through the cost and associated business plans around that.
So there seems to be a real risk, though. I acknowledge your point that we can't just charge per kilowatt hour, or can't just recognise a per kilowatt hour figure. But there seems to be the real possibility that the price of electricity generated, recovered, stored, will be massive without even government subsidies coming in year after year.
I mean, I think that's for others to comment on. My focus is on getting the project schedule and cost and, making a business case for it, which I think is very strong. There are many other factors which will determine the price of electricity.
Minister, can you provide the current projected cost per megawatt hour of electricity generated by Snowy 2 in the first year of operation on notice, please?
I think, Senator, I will take that on notice. I would also direct you to the evidence given to you already by Mr Barnes in relation both to the variability in the electricity market that Snowy will participate in, but
so
also...
there's a lot of variability? A lot of variability means uncertainty?
Senator Roberts, I think that Mr Barnes has given an indication that he thinks that's a strong business case, that they're presently working through it. I've taken your question on notice.
Okay, you're taking the question on notice. Thank you. Right from the start of this project, this had nothing to do with your party, but Malcolm Turnbull's government refused access to the cost-benefit analysis and heavily redacted the business case. So there's been lots of questions about this project right from the start, and now there are even more questions. And I don't blame Mr Barnes for that.
I mean, my interest is in running a commercially viable and efficient company, and that's what I've done all of my career. The reason I joined Snowy 2 is to get the opportunity to deliver Snowy 2, because I think it's an incredibly important asset to the energy transition, and I fully expect it to be very commercial. We're trying to deal with the hardest part of the transition, which is providing deep storage to enable more renewables. So I expect it to be a very commercial business.
Can I confirm media reports that Snowy Hydro was found in a third independent audit last year to be non-compliant on environmental plans in 15 instances, and that you have at least 10 management plans overdue?
I mean, I think, Senator, you may be referring to a National Parks Association report that was released last Thursday without consultation with Snowy Hydro. We are currently operating under all of our construction approvals, so there's no breaches there. The plans and requirements as a result of the construction and operation of Snowy to obviously change nature over time. There are some that are relevant to construction, and we're fully compliant with those. And there are some that are relevant to operation, some that are relevant to rehabilitation. We work closely with all of the agencies to make sure that they're reviewed and consulted on in a very thorough way. And I think there's been a misunderstanding of some of the dates on various websites. So I've reached out to the National Parks Association to help them understand how it operates.
So it's a misunderstanding that 10 of the 16 management plans for multi-billion-dollar pumped hydro project are overdue by 31 months. That's as reported in the media, and that's quite well referring or citing the National Parks Association. So you think they've got it wrong somewhere?
Well, I think that the plans that are being referred to are prepared by Snowy and they're reviewed by various agencies. And in consultation with the agencies, some of the dates that were originally envisaged are not being met. But therefore, phases of the project which are way into the future. And, you know, one of the things that may be useful for us to do is to work with the various agencies to make that understanding of how this process works. I would have happily taken the National Parks Association through that process.
Okay, so they jumped the gun.
Well, they didn't consult with Snowy Hydro before releasing it to the media.
Could I go to your opening statement? You recently announced a 1 to 2 year delay. That's a heck of a range, 100%. From minimum to major.
I mean, it's a project, obviously, which is being constructed over more than 1 to 2 years. It's been in construction a few years. I think it was appropriate to give a range till we do more work.
I appreciate your honesty, but I'm not questioning your honesty, and I appreciate that you have given us that figure. But for the project, that's a pretty big number. What was the original planned project duration?
It's before my time, but perhaps we'll come back to you. I'm going to say we gave a notice to proceed in mid-2020 and power was expected in 25/6.
First power was 1st of July 25.
Sorry, could you speak up? It's very hard to hear.
So first power was 1st of July 25 from a notice to proceed from August 2020, so 5 years was the original.
So 5 years, so the delay is 20 to 40%.
That would be the simple maths, yes.
Okay.
Senator Roberts, I'll get you to
Yep.
wind it up and share the call.
Okay, last question then, Chair. You mentioned, Mr Barnes, in your statement, the combination of the 4 factors. What are the 4 factors? I've been through your statement and I couldn't see them.
So in our advice to ministers and our media release, we identified the effects of COVID and bushfires on the mobilisation of the project, the effect of obviously many global factors on the availability of skilled labour and also the costs of materials. There's a lot of steel and concrete in the project. Some elements of the design, as we've gone through the process of design, we've found that they are, in some cases, more costly to complete. And finally, the site conditions, of which the Florence ground conditions are the most impactful, but also includes things like additional roading. So they're the 4 factors.
Thank you very much. Well, good luck getting that machine
Thanks,
out.
Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Senator Cadell.
Thank you, Chair.